The Bermuda Triangle. A legend. A mystery. A vast graveyard.
It is a place where ships and planes vanish for unexplained reasons.
Hundreds of vessels gone without a trace, swept into oblivion.
I don't understand how 23 men, nothing floats. I mean, not even a life jacket.
Left behind, only disturbing questions. Those who do escape are haunted by memories that few believe.
And I experienced a space-time warp.
And none can explain.
It was about 10 minutes of just the compass was spinning. I was very freaked out.
All of a sudden, everything was totally black. I thought that I was going to die.
Theories have emerged. Geomagnetic anomalies. UFO encounters.
It sat there and glowed for, I guess, 2 or 3 minutes and spawned.
Government conspiracies.
The U.S. military, I think they know a lot more about the anomalies here than they are saying.
Is the truth hidden within a secret underwater naval base? Or in a cryptic message from someone supposedly dead?
The telegram said, "You've been misinformed. I am very much alive."
Now we take on the triangle from every angle with a massive, unprecedented exploration into the mysterious death trap. We'll retrace a doomed military mission through the heart of the Bermuda Triangle, when 6 planes and 27 men vanished in a single day.
60 years later, no one can still say what happened to them.
We'll launch an underwater expedition to find one of the missing planes that no one, including the Navy, has tried to recover. Enlist NASA technology to probe a swamp that could swallow planes whole.
5 aircraft can easily vanish in there.
And pursue a bizarre connection between the Triangle and the lost city of Atlantis.
Through these portals, suddenly these people go. And they're living in another dimension.
Along the way, we experience some of the Triangle's bizarre behavior firsthand.
They have a regular magnetic compass and a fluxgate compass, and neither of them are cooperating.
A journey to unravel a deadly mystery where planes, ships, people, and reason simply vanish. The Bermuda Triangle, startling new secrets. Long cloaked in mystery, the Bermuda Triangle keeps its secrets clinched in a watery death grip. Meddlers and adventurers.
All right, let's go take a look.
Enter here at their own risk. But in an unprecedented effort, we bring the best minds and latest technology together to defy the Triangle and solve one of its most bewildering riddles.
Potential target right here. It's possible.
I'm Lester Holt. The Sci-Fi Channel's unparalleled pursuit of the truth behind the Bermuda Triangle begins with one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in American history. On December 5th, 1945, with World War II over and Christmas just around the corner, 27 servicemen seemingly vanished without a trace. At the core of our story, 5 Navy Avenger torpedo planes, the type of plane that had proven lethally effective in the Pacific against the Japanese. But on this day, the planes have a peaceful mission, a routine training flight that will take them over a section of what is now called the Bermuda Triangle. Sadly, neither they nor a search plane sent to find them ever come back. In sporadic radio transmissions received before those planes disappeared completely, the flight's leader is overheard saying that his compasses have gone haywire. Now, 60 years later, this vintage Navy Avenger, identical to the ones lost, will retrace their exact route to see if anything out of the ordinary happens.
Let's go ahead and stop.
Pilot Rick Siegfried will attempt to navigate the course the same way the pilots did in 1945, using a compass and by simply looking out the window for landmarks and the sun.
It's a challenge to once again go back into the type of navigation they used in that day and to duplicate the route.
Of course, sailors as far back as Columbus have noted strange anomalies in these waters.
On 3 occasions, they did experience a compass variation that was unexplained.
Triangle historian Gian Quizar.
And then on the eve of discovery of the New World, a light was seen on the horizon, and it rose up, levitated, and then vanished. More than one man did see it aboard 2 of the ships.
According to Quizar, those who've witnessed bizarre things here and survived to tell their triangle tale are the lucky ones.
In the 1980s, I think some 35 aircraft vanished, and no one had heard about it. It's not reported in the news.
But on December 5th, 1945, the inexplicable disappearance of 5 planes known collectively as Flight 19, as well as a large seaplane called a Martin Mariner sent searching for them, becomes big news. It remains one of the biggest mysteries of the Bermuda Triangle to this day.
60 years later, no one can still say what happened to them. How can you have 5 aircraft, and then a rescue aircraft, vanish in one night? No trace ever found, and no trace ever found since then. Despite underwater mapping, despite underwater cameras, it basically began the enigma of the Bermuda Triangle.
The term Bermuda Triangle was coined in 1964 by author Vincent Gaddis. Since then, the area has been called many things, including the Devil's Triangle and Triangle of Death. Gaddis defined the triangle as the area between the coast of Florida, Puerto Rico, and Bermuda. But today, historians say strange triangle phenomena actually occur over a much larger area that covers 1.5 million square miles and encompasses the entire east coast of Florida. That's a lot of ocean. But our extraordinary team of scientists are venturing into the teeth of the triangle to search one very specific spot for one very specific airplane.
And those are the last reported coordinates of where the Martin Mariner reportedly exploded and crashed into the ocean.
For the first time ever, our team, led by renowned nautical archaeologist David Bright, will scour the ocean floor for the remains of the search plane that vanished without a trace on December 5th, 1945. This is the flying boat that mysteriously disappeared with its crew of 13 from Navy radar screens just 20 minutes into its flight. At the same moment the plane disappeared from Navy radar, a tanker ship in the area reports seeing a fireball in the sky. On shore, witnesses report a strange green glow far out at sea. 90 minutes after seeing the explosion, the tanker Gaines Mill reports finding an oily film on the water, but no debris and no survivors. Did the Martin Mariner spontaneously explode in midair? If so, where was the wreckage? Or was it swallowed whole by some pretzel-bending warp of time and space? And what about Flight 19, the 5 Avengers that went missing earlier that same night? In Steven Spielberg's Close Encounters of the Third Kind, the crew of Flight 19 is returned to Earth on board an alien spaceship. Is that just Hollywood fantasy?
Lieutenant, welcome home.
There are things that go on out there that we really don't know, and I don't have the answers.
But David White does know a thing or two about the missing flight that has come to define the enigma that is the Bermuda Triangle. In 1945, White was a flight instructor at the Fort Lauderdale Naval Air Station.
Here come some TVMs flying over.
He often flew the same training route in the same Avenger-type planes that disappeared.
These flights went out every day. This navigational training flight was one of 3 or 4 that we had, and it was really quite simple. No problem.
It's a simple 3-point route. The planes leave from Fort Lauderdale, conduct a practice bombing run on an old shipwreck off Hens and Chicken Shoals in the Bahamas, and continue eastward. At Great Stirrup Key, the young navigators are to turn northwest, cross Grand Bahama Island, and then turn for home off Great Sail Key. If all goes well, flight time is about 2.5 hours.
They all had their wings, and this training base was what they called an operational training base, which was the last flight training that pilots received before they went out to join the fleet.
But something goes horribly wrong on Flight 19. 90 minutes into the flight, instructor Charles Taylor believes he's not where he's supposed to be.
For a pilot with that much training to lose his way out over the Bahamas would be very rare. I don't remember it ever happening before.
According to official transcripts, Taylor radios that his compasses are malfunctioning and believes he has taken Flight 19 way off course.
I don't know where we are. We must have got lost after that last turn.
What is not clear is if the other pilots are also getting similar readings on their compasses.
Now, why didn't 4 other pilots contradict him and say we are on course? Why did they simply follow him? And that is the big mystery.
An even bigger mystery is why no one is able to pick up Flight 19 on radar. Whatever the reason, Taylor's voice is heard through the static of intermittent radio transmissions, and it is clear that he is lost.
I'm in the Keys. Don't know how far down. Don't know how to get to Lauderdale.
By 4:26 p.m., the time when they should be landing, Flight 19 is in deep trouble. With only an hour of daylight and an estimated 2 hours of fuel remaining, there is disagreement among the pilots over which direction to take.
We would just head west to get home.
Thinking he is in the Keys, Taylor wants to head northeast, where he believes mainland Florida is. But one of his trainees, Marine Captain Edward Powers, who actually outranks Taylor, believes the planes are near where they should be, in the Bahamas. Powers wants to head west.
At this point, it appears there was a disagreement between Powers and Taylor, and only a few minutes after they went east, you could hear Taylor complaining you didn't go far enough east. And so Powers, apparently at that point on his own initiative, did turn the flight west and assumed command of the flight.
At 5:19 p.m., with daylight fading and no land in sight, Taylor is overheard preparing Flight 19 to ditch in the ocean.
First man gets down to 10 gallons of gas with all land and water together. Everyone understands that.
At 7:04 p.m., the skies over the Atlantic Ocean are pitch black, and bad weather is moving in. Another pilot from Flight 19, Joseph Bossy, is finally overheard. It is brief and barely audible.
Fox 3, Fox Tier 3, Fox Tier 3 to Fox 28.
It is the last anyone ever hears from Flight 19. Early the next morning, David White joins the largest air and sea rescue operation in Navy history. Not only is the Navy missing a squadron of torpedo bombers and their crews, incredibly, it is also missing a very large search plane that went looking for those torpedo bombers. That plane alone carries a crew of 13.
We were very surprised that we found no trace of any debris of any kind. We certainly expected to find someone in the water. Each of the crewmen had a Mae West, and there was a 3-man life raft on each airplane.
After 4 days, the search is called off, and 27 servicemen are officially entered in the Navy record books as lost at sea. But are they? 3 weeks after the search is called off, the family of one crewman receives a mysterious telegram that only deepens the mystery. A mystery that we hope to unlock out here.
So a target would be a dark spot in there?
A target would usually have a bright side to it and then a dark shadow behind it.
The engine blocks were very, very heavy. There were 2 big, beautiful Pratt & Whitney engines, and they would have sank like stones.
Many adventurers have tried but failed to find the Avengers. Our search for them will explore new territory.
Back in gear.
But before we get to that, we begin with a new search. An expedition that has never been launched before to find the missing search plane, the Martin Mariner.
They felt that they had the coordinates down and nailed pretty shut.
If our scientists and divers are able to find a small fragment, even a trace of the Mariner down there where the Navy says it is, then we may well hold the keys to a 60-year-old mystery.
It did sink in this area of the ocean. I have absolutely no doubt about it.
As the sun sets over the Bermuda Triangle on a balmy December evening in 1945, a total of 27 American servicemen are flying into oblivion. 5 Navy torpedo planes, out on a routine training mission over these waters, inexplicably get lost. And in an incredible coincidence, a large Navy search plane sent to look for them seemingly vaporizes in midair, leaving nothing but a greasy smudge on the ocean surface. The mystery of what happened to those planes on that night launches a pop culture legend.
There has to be an explanation somewhere for something like this.
In his yet-to-be-released book on Flight 19, Gian Quizar offers shocking new evidence to support his theory that the missing squadron did not crash in the ocean, as the Navy contends, but instead landed in a large swamp in Georgia.
There's only one place I would say they could have gone. The wind was still from the southwest. They would have to turn into the wind to ditch. If they turned southwest, I'd take them right over the heart of the Okefenokee Swamp.
To test Quizar's theory that the 5 Avengers actually landed in Georgia's Okefenokee Swamp, we are, for the first time ever, enlisting the resources of NASA to search for the missing squadron.
There it is. Looks like a pipe. It's about 20 feet long.
And with an unequaled assembly of scientists, oceanographers, and deep-sea divers, we are scouring the ocean floor, where witnesses on board the tanker Gaines Mill say they saw a flash of fire in the sky at the exact moment the Mariner disappeared from Navy radar screens.
But the plane is made of largely aluminum. Would that show up?
It will show up on the sonar, but it won't show up on the magnetometer.
The target that they've got looks like it's 20 feet long, okay, about this wide, and maybe up above the surface about this much.
If successful, we will once and for all be able to answer the question of what happened to those planes. If not, we will once again be left to ponder the extraordinary fate of the men who flew them. Could it be, as some suggest, that the Bermuda Triangle lies at a cosmic crossroads where ordinary rules of time and space don't apply? Is it possible that submerged remnants of an advanced civilization still haunt this vast expanse of ocean? Look into the faces of the missing. Imagine them as they once were, flesh and blood, as alive as you and I. Where are they now? Though it has been 60 years, each left loved ones behind who remember the day they disappeared as if it were yesterday.
But he was one of the taller ones, I think, in the family, and slim and very debonair, and the girls all were crazy about him.
And 22-year-old Donald Arsenault is just as crazy about the girls. Practically every letter he sends home to Lafayette, Louisiana, contains pictures of him with young women. On the evening of December 5th, 1945, his big sister Aline, herself a Navy wave stationed in Washington, sits down to write Donald a letter.
Dear Donald, I haven't been able
to... What Aline doesn't know is that at that very moment, her brother Donald, stationed in Florida as a radar man on this Martin Mariner, is about to fly into the history books. The Mariner, with Donald Arsenault and 12 other crewmen on board, is headed east on an emergency rescue mission to look for 5 Navy Avengers that are presumed down somewhere in what is now called the Bermuda Triangle. They are never heard from again.
But I remember, my daddy getting the telegram, and I think we were all really upset because we were looking forward to him coming home.
For 4 days, the Navy combs the ocean surface with ships and planes, searching for some sign of Donald Arsenault's Mariner or the 5 missing Avengers.
I think we heard on the news that it was probably the largest rescue mission since Amelia Earhart.
But the Navy finds nothing, not a life jacket or a raft, or even so much as a paper cup. It is assumed that something, perhaps a careless smoker on the gas-laden aircraft, caused the Mariner to explode. Why then was no wreckage found? Without finding debris of any kind, how could anyone know for sure? It was here in this empty patch of ocean, about 25 miles off the Florida coast, that the Gaines Mills reported finding the oil slick after witnessing the flash in the sky that night. They marked the coordinates, and that's where we began our search for the missing Mariner and her crew. Our expedition will be the first ever to look beneath the waves for clues of what happened to the Mariner.
You need to head southwest, Rick.
Our leader is David Bright.
That'll get us down to the first mark line.
A hard-nosed scientist who believes that what goes up must come down.
There were 2 big, beautiful Pratt & Whitney engines, and they would have sank like stones.
By dragging a side-scan sonar and a magnetometer over the bottom, 80 feet below, in a carefully calibrated search pattern around the Mariner's last coordinates, our team is confident of finding a long-lost piece of history.
If anything's there, we're going to find it. We've got the magnetometer running, measuring the Earth's magnetic field. Anything that's made of iron or steel, we'll pick up.
But if history is any guide, locating the Mariner will not be easy. Some estimate as many as 1,000 boats and planes have disappeared here without a trace, claiming as many as 8,000 victims along the way. Among them, the crew of the USS Cyclops in 1918.
Simply vanished without trace. 309 men gone. And no evidence that a lot of sailors turned up anywhere, that there had been a mutiny.
The freighter Marine Sulphur Queen in 1963 and the Sylvia Assa in 1976.
Whatever those ships encountered, it was just incredibly destructive and obliterated them without survivors.
In 1980, the freighter Poet, also gone without a trace.
520-foot ship carrying nothing more dangerous than number 2 yellow corn. Disappeared north of Bermuda, no EPIRB signal.
Some dismiss these disappearances as likely due to human error in an age before we had high-tech satellite equipment. But the fact is, vessels disappear in the triangle with disturbing frequency, without warning, and without a trace.
Boats still disappear, probably 12 to 20 per year. 2000, 2001, 2 sister ships vanished in the Caribbean.
The U.S. Coast Guard in Miami is keenly aware of the perils of the vast open ocean that makes up the Bermuda Triangle. This one station alone is responsible for 20% of the nation's search and rescue missions.
The Coast Guard doesn't subscribe to the myth of the Bermuda Triangle. The ocean is an unforgiving environment. If you make a mistake, you will pay for it. And there's any number of factors that contribute to the losses of aircraft or vessel in this or any other part of the oceans.
But according to historians like Quizar, human error alone cannot explain all the Triangle's bizarre disappearances.
the area and the enigma is quite real. More ships and planes do vanish. They vanish for very unusual reasons in some cases.
In 1978, a small charter plane flying from Fort Lauderdale to Havana disappears from radar. In 1954, a special Navy flight carrying 44 passengers and crew to the Azores vanishes. The cargo manifest lists 111 life vests and 5 life rafts on board.
It's a luggage flight. There's no debris. That goes on frequently enough.
Even Charles Lindbergh reportedly has a close call in the Triangle. In 1928, 1 year after flying solo across the Atlantic, Lindbergh takes off for a night flight from Havana to St. Louis. According to published accounts of that flight, somewhere over the Florida Straits, Lindbergh's compass begins spinning, and by the time the sun comes up, he is way off course and headed out to sea. Down on the ocean surface, our expedition is getting its first taste of triangle treachery as well.
How close are we?
While trying to get our divers in position over a promising target, Captain Eric Smith sees something he's never seen in all his years at sea.
I'm steering by GPS. I have a regular magnetic compass and a fluxgate compass, and neither of them are cooperating. You ever had that happen to you before? No, I never have.
Could an erratic compass have been what happened to Flight 19 in 1945? To find out, we will send a Navy Avenger, one of only about a dozen still operable, to retrace Flight 19's path through the Bermuda Triangle.
We're all taught that from the very beginning to believe the instruments. The compass is a very reliable, very simple instrument.
Rick Siegfried is an experienced United Airlines pilot who flies around the globe in 747s. But he also flies this TBM Avenger for the Tri-State Warbird Museum in Ohio.
We're going to try to reenact the flight as best we can, not using modern navigation. We're going to use dead reckoning nav, just like they would have, back in that time. Make sure everything's secure. Stack is good and tight. Make sure there's no oil leaks coming from behind the engine.
Siegfried knows well the history and legend he is up against.
I definitely believe that there's something that's unexplainable at this time in that area.
William Kittinger actually witnessed one of the strangest triangle disappearing acts of all time. He was working in air traffic control in St. Thomas when a Navajo twin-engine plane approaching the airport simply vanished.
When he reported 2 miles out for landing, I asked him to show me his landing light, and I had visual contact when he showed me his light, and I turned my attention back to the departing aircraft and watched him depart. And when I turned back to clear the Navajo to land, I got no response, and his landing light was gone, and the target was missing off the radar.
Kittinger thought the plane had gone down in the shallow water just off the airport and immediately notified the Coast Guard.
There was nothing found. There was no aircraft, no reports of downed aircraft. It just disappeared.
Our team of scientists are convinced they will have better luck finding the missing mariner.
It's a potential target right here.
Hours of dragging sensors over the bottom has proven one thing. The bottom here looks like a moonscape. It's flat and hard. Anything man-made lying down here is going to stand out.
We're on target number 2 that they've identified, and we believe it's some kind of a piece that's sticking up. Maybe a wing edge, a plane, a piece of sheet metal from the plane or something like that.
For 60 years, the most confounding and compelling mystery of the Bermuda Triangle is the disappearance of Flight 19. 5 Navy Avengers fly off the coast of Florida on a routine training exercise and never return.
The oil tends to collect in the bottom cylinders, so we pull this through to make sure that there's not a hydraulic lock.
Pilot Rick Siegfried is getting ready to fly the path that Flight 19 planned to take that day. It's just one leg of our multi-pronged search for answers to what happened in December 1945.
we might get a little insight into how they might have either lost track of time and or lost track of their position.
Flying a World War II Navy Avenger identical to the fated planes, Siegfried will navigate the course the same way the pilots did 60 years ago, using a compass, the sun, and landmarks.
Battery on. Oil good. Boost pump on.
Our plan is to take off from Fort Lauderdale, fly east 113 miles, before turning northwest at Great Stirrup Key. After traveling 73 miles, we'll turn southwest off Great Sail Key and take the 120-mile journey back to Fort Lauderdale.
You ready for start?
The Naval Air Station where Flight 19 originated is now the Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport. And like the 5 planes that disappeared in 1945, we take off under mostly clear skies.
And what a glorious day, good visibility, scattered cloud deck up in front of us.
Following Flight 19's route, we head for Hens and Chicken Shoals.
The shoal should be just this side of the lighthouse and a little south.
We find the shoals. It's those rocks sticking out of the water.
We're looking at the shoals. I didn't see the shipwreck. It might be just a little further south.
But there's no sign of the old shipwreck where Flight 19 did its bombing runs. To stay on the same schedule, we fly around the shoals for about 15 minutes before continuing east.
And why don't we head for Little Stirrup Key?
Down on the water, our experts have spent days systematically searching this patch of ocean for some scrap of the Martin Mariner that vanished while looking for Flight 19. This is where the Navy says the Mariner disappeared from its radar screens. This is where a passing tanker reported finding an oil slick.
Run!
All of our research and conjecture comes down to this: putting divers in the water. One of our vessels, the Sea Dog Diver, has found a target. It's big and it's metal, and it's 80 feet down. Could it be part of the Martin Mariner that disappeared 60 years ago, launching the legend of the Bermuda Triangle? Andrew Driver, a former member of the British Special Forces, is about to find out. Not knowing what awaits at the end of this line, Andrew begins a slow descent, fighting a strong current. At 40 feet, about halfway down, visibility is about 15 feet. Not ideal, but good enough to find a large chunk of airplane, if it's there. Suddenly, at 60 feet, the water temperature drops and visibility is cut in half. Andrew has hit a thermocline, a layer of cold water and thick plankton that will make finding the target that much more difficult. Andrew continues his descent, but doesn't realize he has arrived on the ocean floor until he hits it. Using a reel of line to measure his distance from the spot where the dive weights landed, Andrew begins swimming in ever-increasing circles until gradually a silhouette comes into view, something that looks man-made. Is this the wreckage we've been looking for? Or is it the muted remains of yet another disappearance from the Bermuda Triangle? Beneath this glistening water lies a graveyard littered with the skeletons of unnamed vessels. Their watery deaths remain a mystery. Locating remains of boats and planes known to be missing shouldn't be difficult with all the high-tech sonar equipment now available.
It's not such a big ocean anymore, considering what electronics can do.
But for unknown reasons, in the Triangle, evidence is rarely found.
It has to be something local to the area. It does not occur elsewhere to this extent. And always disappearance, always nothing, and so many.
In cases involving crashes or explosions, the lack of debris could be due to the Gulf Stream, which cuts right through the Triangle. With some of the fastest currents in the world, it is like the ocean's superhighway. This means debris can be swept away quickly. But heavy items, like plane engines, huge ships and large pleasure boats should still be there.
A boat disappearance is actually more mysterious, but we don't get as much information because the NTSB will not investigate, nor does the Coast Guard, a pleasure craft disappearance.
Parts of the triangle are incredibly deep. North of Puerto Rico is what's called the Puerto Rico Trench. Here, the depth drops to 30,000 feet, the deepest point in the entire Atlantic Ocean. And right off Andros Island in the Bahamas is what is called the tongue of the ocean.
The water depth suddenly changes from being just a few hundred feet into thousands of feet.
This deep drop-off is a dramatic change from the rest of the Bahamas bank, which is extremely shallow. This creates unique patterns in weather and waves.
In this sort of confined area, it's almost like a canyon. The water patterns and also wave conditions are pretty strange.
Hans Graber is an oceanographer at the University of Miami who specializes in rogue waves. Rogue waves are large waves that defy the pattern of the waves on the surface at any given time. They can be perilous, up to 120 feet in size. Graber thinks rogue waves may be the cause of many a ship's unknown demise.
Quite often they come without much warning. They suddenly appear, and that could break over the bow of the ship, and in some cases break the ship in half, or in some cases even push it underwater. If someone is on the deck, I don't think that there's much hope for anyone finding that person anymore.
In the spring of 2005, passengers on the Norwegian Dawn, an enormous cruise ship traveling from the Bahamas to New York, experienced the terror of a rogue wave. Out of nowhere, a 70-foot wave slams the boat. Passengers are injured, windows are broken, and 62 cabins are flooded. Rogue waves are just one of the unexpected perils of the triangle. Dangerously deceptive weather conditions are another.
They can change very quickly, even hourly, especially in the summertime. You can get very quickly thunderstorms, squalls.
An average of 5 hurricanes a year barrel through this area. Also, waterspouts, like this one on the water behind these houses in South Florida, can pop up out of nowhere. These tornadoes over water indiscriminately suck up and spit out anything in their path. The Bermuda Triangle's treacherous waves and weather may cause vessels distress, but they don't explain all the disappearances or answer the perplexing mystery of why so many, like the Mariner, vanish without a trace. Everything that falls from the ocean surface finds new life on the bottom. The target that casts such a promising shadow on the sonar screen looks quite different up close, encrusted with coral and teeming with sea life. 4 feet wide and 8 feet long, the target Andrew Driver has located rises about 3 feet off the ocean floor. It looks man-made, but what is it? Knocking away the decades, Andrew began searching for something recognizable on this fragment from another time. In the dim light of the ocean depths, he hopes to find a serial number, an emblem or seal, anything that might reveal the artifact's origin. After examining the target for 20 minutes, Andrew returns to the surface with news our team anxiously waits to hear. Have they, at long last, found the missing Mariner? The seas are dead calm out on the edge of the Bermuda Triangle. For the first time since it vanished 60 years ago, our team thinks they may have found a tangible link to the missing Mariner. But after 20 minutes on the ocean floor, examining a lost relic, scuba expert Andrew Driver surfaces with more questions than answers.
What's it look like?
There's nothing that shouts out at you. It's an airplane, but Over the 60 years or so, things could have grown up all around it.
Were you able to chip any of it away?
Yeah, we chipped away and we dug around with a screwdriver, not wanting to do too much damage to the reef or anything like that, just to see if we could find anything that was, obviously human or metallic. But we didn't see anything.
After another dive and further discussion, it's determined that whatever it is, or used to be, this fragment is simply too far gone to be positively identified now. With miles of ocean bottom still to be surveyed, expedition leader David Bright decides to press on, confident that the large debris field he's looking for will soon be found. But those who've had close calls in the Bermuda Triangle say mere science and logic cannot fully explain what happens here. Some insist there is something otherworldly going on.
After seeing what I saw, I think there's something to the Bermuda Triangle mystery.
Doug Gurdon and Paul Vance have a close encounter with mystifying forces in the Triangle. They are on a sailboat en route to the Bahamas from Florida in June of 2001. Night has just fallen when their transforming experience begins.
We were about 12 miles offshore. During our trip, I've been watching the sky and watching the airplanes go over going into Miami. I watched one particular light, and it came across the sky, and then it stopped. What happened next was that this cloud and this light slowly turned into a swirling mist and started revolving very slowly, and was mesmerized by this, obviously. It was something I had never seen before. It sat there and glowed for 2 or 3 minutes and spun, but it is as if this light came to a predetermined position and this cloud formed underneath it, almost like it was a door. And then the light went through that door or a passage.
Then things get even scarier. The only engine on the boat, the one they were using to motor across the Gulf Stream, suddenly starts to fail.
When we saw this light and it had finished dissipating, we had engine problems.
Without a motor, Vance and Gurdon have to sail back to Florida in the middle of the night. They are shaken by what they saw lurking in the skies above the Triangle and relieved to have escaped it.
I just said my last little prayer because, it was really a shocking thing to see. I just made sure all my sins were forgiven one more time.
Was it a UFO? Reports of strange lights in the sky here go back for centuries. Remember those lights spotted by Columbus on the eve of discovering the New World? Is it possible that visitors from another galaxy were visiting the Triangle even then?
I've been landing the flying boat out at
Pilot Bruce Gernon has a UFO experience while flying in his plane off the coast of Florida.
It was shaped like a saucer. It was huge, and it was glowing really bright. All of a sudden, it shot right at us at a phenomenal rate, and I thought we were going to crash with it. And I was saying my last prayers as I turned off to the left as sharp as I could possibly turn. And then when I looked back, after I made the turn, it was gone.
One of the most disturbing UFO sightings ever recorded happens just off the coast of Puerto Rico in 1980.
Air to ground, pick up a pilot panicking. His name was Jose Maldonado Torres. He is talking about a weird object harassing his aircraft that made him change courses 3 times. He keeps calling Mayday. It's obvious he's quite desperate by this time. He vanishes with his last communication. A few minutes later, another blip reappears on the scope, tracking in a different direction, no transponder of any kind, and then that vanishes from the scope as well.
Do UFOs play a role in the disappearances here? They are just one of the many mysteries of the Triangle. After 3 long days on the water, our experts have found nothing definitive in their search for the missing mariner.
All right, guys, let's pack it up for today.
But later that night, those of us on board our dive boat, the Ketty Lund, find out just how terrifyingly real the mystique of the Bermuda Triangle can be.
I think you'd be surprised how much...
Shortly after 10 p.m., as our crew relaxes, the Ketty Lund is suddenly plunged into darkness. All of the electrical circuits are dead. No lights, no radio. Because the generator won't crank, the powerful bilge pumps which keep the old wooden ship afloat are useless. In short, the Ketty Lund is sinking, with no way to call for help. It is after midnight before Captain Eric Smith and our crew are able to raise the ship's massive anchor and get the engine started.
Fire in the hole!
After steaming west for more than 2 hours, the crew is able to use a cell phone to call for help.
Is Eric all right with us tying on?
Early the next morning, the cavalry arrives, carrying a new generator.
She's not going to make it through the gate, so we're going to go right up on top. All right, we got it.
After a night spent struggling to keep the Ketty Lund afloat, our bedraggled crew begins another day, thankful to have avoided becoming another statistic.
Okay, I see our destination.
On our own mission to retrace the route of Flight 19, we are approaching the time when Lieutenant Taylor started to seriously doubt what his compass was telling him.
And let's start a left turn now.
We're flying over Great Stirrup Key, about an hour into our flight, right on schedule.
And as we proceed northbound, it looks like our heading is nice and stable.
We turn northeast and head towards Great Sail Key, the point Flight 19 never found. Along the way, pilot Rick Siegfried will look for Grand Bahama Island, the landmark Lieutenant Taylor never saw, and closely monitor the compass.
What's your compass doing? Compass is as steady as a rock.
Nothing weird happening with the compass?
Not a thing. It's steady as a rock.
The question is, will the compass stay accurate? Or will we, too, lose our way in the Bermuda Triangle? It seems like anyone who spends time in this area has a tale about electromagnetic malfunction or spinning compasses. Remember when our captain struggled to get an accurate reading from his compasses?
I'm steering by GPS. I have a regular magnetic compass and a fluxgate compass, and neither of them are cooperating.
Well, there's something about the area of the triangle. There's something, either its placement on the globe, the unique weather conditions, humidity that causes the electric charges, something beneath the sea.
But what could it be? Science has no real explanation for phenomena encountered here by people like Krista Brown, a diving instructor in Bimini.
My husband Brown and I have been on the boat before with a compass and with a GPS, and the two of them are not aligned with one another. One is telling you to go 25 degrees one way and the other is 25 degrees in the opposite direction. There's some force or some energy or something out there that's causing them not to align up.
William Kittinger, the air traffic controller who witnesses a plane disappear, also experiences electromagnetic deviations as a pilot.
As I was climbing out of Great Inagua to Port-au-Prince, as I was climbing out, I believe I flew around 6,000 feet. My compass started spinning. I'd never seen a compass do that before. It lasted approximately 5 to 10 minutes,
Kittinger had an electronic compass that is still working, but other pilots are not so lucky. Memories of scary magnetic deviations still haunt pilot Carrie Trantham years after a terrifying flight. She is flying solo to Key West one evening. She's expecting an easy flight.
There were really high clouds up there, and I thought that everything was going to be great. And all of a sudden, it was like a blanket fell over my airplane, and I was in pitch dark. All of a sudden, I'm not sure what the plane is doing. I lose control of the airplane.
Carrie's instruments are totally erratic. She has no horizon, no way to navigate. She is engulfed by what seems like a thick fog.
So I wasn't sure if I was upside down, right side up, going north or south or what. I thought that I was going to die.
She levels her wings and tries to call local air traffic control for help, but even the radio has inexplicably gone out.
I tried to contact the radio frequency that I had been given before this happened. I hadn't talked to that controller yet, so I tried to call that controller. There was no response.
Finally, after what seems to Carrie like an eternity, the lights of Miami appear. Her instruments start working again, and she navigates her way home. Is Carrie Trantham surrounded by some kind of strange and dangerous fog? Krista Brown, the diving instructor in Bimini, says she has encountered bizarre fog out on the water.
About a mile out, a fog just overtook the whole entire boat. All of a sudden it just like appeared like a cloud, and then it just encrusted all around us. It was very disorienting because you didn't know where you were going. You couldn't see any other landmarks.
Fog is created over water when the water is warmer than the air. But Krista says those conditions weren't in place.
It was kind of freaky. Very, very, very strange.
Does this fog have an electromagnetic component to it? Could magnetic deviations be the key to the mystery of Flight 19? High in the air above the vast Bermuda Triangle, we continue to retrace the path of doomed Flight 19. We've now hit the hour-and-a-half mark, when for the 5 Navy Avengers, the unexplainable starts to happen. At 3:40 p.m. on December 5th, 1945, the pilots expected to see Grand Bahama Island, but all they saw was ocean.
I definitely am starting to see the landmass, which I am going to assume is Grand Bahama. It's about the only large landmass out here.
About 90 minutes into our flight, we fly over it.
Boy, I can't see how anybody would have missed Grand Bahama Island if they'd been anywhere close to the right point.
This is the point in time when Lieutenant Taylor notices that both his compasses are acting erratically. He gets confused. Does he have spatial disorientation? Or is he a victim of something stranger? One individual who thinks he holds the key to the mystery of the Bermuda Triangle is pilot Bruce Gernon. While flying from Andros Island in the Bahamas to Miami in 1974, he has an experience that is so bizarre, he spends 30 years researching it. About 30 miles into his trip, he enters a strange cloud.
An unusual thing about it was that it seemed to come right out of the ocean itself. It had no base or no ceiling to fly under. So I penetrated into it, and it was eerie inside. It was full of electricity, but there was no precipitation.
Then, Vernon says the clouds formed into a strange, perfectly shaped tunnel, and he was trapped flying in it.
These strange lines formed, and they were spiraling and turning counterclockwise very slowly. And then I noticed my electronic instruments weren't functioning properly. Even the magnetic compass was slowly rotating counterclockwise. We contacted Miami Radio, and they were unable to locate us on radar.
A few terrifying minutes pass, and then the spiraling lines of the tunnel suddenly disappear. To his astonishment, Gernon realizes he is right over Miami Beach.
I immediately looked at my watch and noticed I'd been flying only 33 minutes. But once I entered the tunnel, time and space started to change. And I experienced a space-time warp. And it only took me 3 minutes to travel to Miami. So that's 100 miles in 3 minutes.
After years of research, Gernon concludes that he was enveloped by a phenomena he calls electronic fog.
This electronic fog has the capability of attaching itself to boats and airplanes.
Gernon says pilots can suddenly find themselves stuck in this fog, which clings to vessels, inducing spatial disorientation. He thinks the fog causes electromagnetic malfunction. Instruments no longer work. The pilot has no sense of direction and no means to navigate. Electronic fog, he says, can be so intense that it creates a time storm, like the tunnel he narrowly escaped.
Many of the planes and ships that have disappeared may have entered into a time storm that was so intense that they disintegrated.
Gernon is not alone in thinking that time and space disorientations occur in the triangle. One theory is that Flight 19 traveled through a portal to another dimension. In scientific terms, this is called a wormhole.
A wormhole is a shortcut, like a subway tube, that allows you to go from point A and point B and never go faster than the speed of light. It allows you to punch a hole in space and essentially take the shortcut to reach a distant point in space and time.
Michio Kaku is a physicist at the City University of New York. He says mathematics show that wormholes can, in theory, exist. But so far no one, at least not on our planet, has found a way to harness them.
We have to open our mind to the possibility of a civilization 1,000,000 years more advanced than us, that a Type 3 civilization may be able to use Einstein's equations to essentially bend space-time into a pretzel in order to punch a hole in space and in order to utilize the power of a wormhole.
Wormholes may seem like a dark and far-fetched fate for Flight 19. But even more sinister scenarios exist, including allegations of a Navy cover-up. Among those with suspicions is the family of George Payanessa, a radio man on Flight 19. His nephew Frank thinks there are still many unsettling questions.
I don't understand how 23 men, nothing floats. I mean, not even a life jacket, piece of fuselage, some kind of equipment. I don't understand it.
3 weeks after Flight 19 disappears, the Payanessa family receives a disturbing telegram that haunts them to this day.
The telegram was sent the 26th of December at 10:15 in the morning. Said, "You've been misinformed. I am very much alive," and it was signed Georgie.
The telegram can only be one of two things: a sick prank or evidence of some kind of Navy conspiracy. A small detail, the use of her son's nickname, leaves George's mother convinced that the telegram is real.
She doesn't think that if it was signed by anybody else, it would probably have said George. And my aunt believed, until she died, that Georgie was alive. She felt that there was a cover-up.
There is another puzzling thing about the telegram. It is sent to George's brother Joseph at an address that would not be easily available to anyone outside of the military. Would someone in the loyal ranks of the Navy be so cruel as to think this was a funny prank?
The thing that puzzles me is not only the telegram, but the fact that they knew my father's address at the Marine Corps barracks in Washington, D.C.
One of the reasons people theorize the Navy may be involved in unexplained disappearances in the Triangle is because of AUTEC, a top-secret U.S. Navy testing facility. AUTEC stands for Atlantic Undersea Test and Evaluation Center. Underwater training exercises are performed here with missiles and submarines.
I believe that it's not a coincidence that the U.S. military has located AUTEC here in the Bermuda Triangle. I think they know a lot more about the anomalies here than they are saying.
This unauthorized footage shows the above-ground portion of AUTEC on Andros Island in the Bahamas. It is located just feet from the tongue of the ocean, where the depth abruptly plunges by thousands of feet. The deep blue channel you see here is for submarines. We made repeated requests to interview someone from AUTEC and get a tour of the facility, but were denied. Suspicion about AUTEC's role stems from rumors about highly classified Navy electromagnetic tests during World War II. The rumors are the basis of a movie, The Philadelphia Experiment, about a covert military project to make ships disappear. In the movie, the test goes seriously wrong.
Get back, get back, get back.
The movie is based on an alleged Navy experiment in the 1940s called Project Rainbow that was shrouded in secrecy.
It was probably an unidentified project during the war in which they were either trying to make a ship invisible to radar or invisible, quote unquote, to magnetic mines. If doing that, they might have encountered an enormous coronal phenomenon.
The coronal phenomenon is another unexplained triangle mystery. Flashes of colored light in the sky, like the flashes reported at the time the Mariner disappeared. Could ships and planes unknowingly steer into secret tests being conducted at AUTEC? Some believe AUTEC is a cache of clandestine operations that they conceal undisclosed vessels, including underwater submersible objects called USOs.
I think the AUTEC facility has UFOs and USOs, and that some of the phenomenon is coming from that base.
Some people think AUTEC is similar to Area 51, and they are experimenting with alien spacecraft that they have captured.
AUTEC's role in electromagnetic testing remains unknown, but others confirm that electromagnetic phenomenon exists.
It's been done in laboratories since then by accident as well, in which you lock up magnetic fields and it causes very bizarre reactions, including the disappearance of metallic objects.
In the late 1970s, engineer John Hutchinson creates extraordinary magnetic vortices with equipment crammed into his apartment. He seems to levitate objects like this saw and this broom. He appears to make plates spin and coins jiggle. This is his footage, which no outsider has ever authenticated. But if it is as strong as it looks, it suggests that manipulating electromagnetic forces can have drastic consequences, results that raise new questions about what happened to Flight 19 and who was involved.
The target that they've got looks like it's 20 feet long.
My guess is there was something there at one point, but a lot of it's disintegrated. And that's where you can find a 60-year-old aircraft.
For 5 days, our expedition has been combing the ocean bottom at the exact location the Navy says a search plane went down 60 years ago. We have found a strange object on the ocean floor, but it doesn't appear to be a piece of the missing plane.
I truly believe we're looking at the engines, which were big. Right.
And with only 2 days left to finish scanning our target area, expedition leader David Bright desperately needs a new plan.
We know where it's not, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. So,
armed with the best equipment and best information available, it is now up to some of the best minds in underwater archaeology to determine the Mariner's final resting place.
Do you know from the radar at what height it dropped off? Was it,
Just how high and fast the Mariner is flying when witnesses on the Gaines Mill see that fireball in the sky are just two of the many questions stumping our team.
They found no debris but just oil.
Okay, so they did find oil. So what does it mean if you find an intact oil slick with regard to a plane crashing?
It means a tank had to hit intact, at least one fuel tank or one fuel cell.
If, as our experts suspect, large pieces of the plane hit the water intact near the coordinates of that oil slick, then the heaviest of those pieces, the engines, each weighing more than a ton, must still be there.
Let's expand the lines and look for a larger target.
Right. Exactly.
After 40 minutes, a consensus.
Yes,
by searching south and east of the Navy's original coordinates and adjusting the towfish settings to search for bigger objects over a broader area, our team will double its chances of finding the Mariner's engines.
Okay, good.
Very good, yes.
That's a plan.
We have a plan?
It's a good plan, yes.
Meanwhile, we're nearing the last leg of the journey, retracing the path Flight 19 had planned to take 60 years ago, looking for any clues that may be revealed in the sky. But our compass is working perfectly, as are all of the other instruments.
Looks as like we're making our turn point at Great Sail Key. Making a nice left turn here.
We reach Great Sail Key, the small island Flight 19 never found, and head back to Fort Lauderdale.
Sadly, Flight 19, I don't believe, ever made it to this point, which is the final leg back from Great Sail Key into Fort Lauderdale.
So what happened to those missing planes? Unlike the Navy, Gian Quizar doesn't believe the planes are sitting on the bottom of the ocean.
There's solid evidence that Flight 19 could not have ditched at sea, as is the standard Navy scenario.
In 1945, the Navy believes the planes went down around here because of a radio fixed position report at 5:50 p.m. That report places the aircraft within this 100-mile radius. But at 7 o'clock p.m., another radar report shows 4 to 6 aircraft near Flagler Beach, Florida. The Navy dismisses this report, though, believing Flight 19 just kept flying back and forth over the water, never reaching the Florida coast.
There is no way it could not have detected Flight 19 had that flight been at sea. So the idea that they ditched at sea is impossible because they would have been picked up on radar doing so.
If the Avengers never ditched at sea, then where did they go? A new theory has emerged. With a moonless night and thickening cloud cover, they could have been flying over land and not even known it.
There's only one place I would say they could have gone, the Okefenokee Swamp.
In Georgia, near the Florida border, the Okefenokee is a vast and watery wilderness stretching 650 miles. As a wildlife refuge, it's home to many endangered species, and like any good swamp, alligators. Could it also be the home of what remains of Flight 19?
5 aircraft can easily vanish in there.
To further support his theory, Quizar points to another radar report from that night. Air Transport Command reports 5 unidentified aircraft at 8:50 p.m., 32 miles from Brunswick, Georgia. At the time, speculation that these are the 5 missing Avengers is met with deep skepticism, because it was estimated that their fuel would only last until 8 p.m. at the latest. But Quizar says the fuel estimates were grossly underestimated, since the planes weren't weighted down with bombs, and because the pilots were not flying near top speeds. Could they have made it all the way to the Georgia swamp, several hundred miles past the search area?
There's no doubt about it. They had enough fuel with the direction they were heading west to hit Florida and go beyond, actually.
The Okefenokee, with its vast and treacherous terrain, is almost impossible to explore in any great depth. But we will attempt to outwit one of Mother Nature's most impenetrable fortresses. We commissioned Digital Globe to acquire QuickBird satellite images of a 262 square mile section of the swamp. We then sent the data to NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama. Using a technique known as image processing, NASA hopes to use subtle color variations in the overgrown swamp foliage, invisible to the naked eye, to find the airplanes. The healthiest, most vigorous growth looks bright red. Plants under stress, perhaps caused by a rusty fuselage or slowly leaking fluids lying below, look a dull brown or pale pink.
They're not going to see a perfect silhouette of an aircraft under any circumstance. The tannic acid in the water would have corroded most everything. The engine stock will be there, parts of the fuselage.
NASA divides the image data into 300 frames, repeatedly scanning back and forth through the minute pixels for more than 24 eye-straining man-hours.
If they end up in the swamp, there's going to be a big fallout, because here's 5 aircraft in a government-controlled swamp, and the Navy never knew it.
Could one of the biggest mysteries surrounding the Bermuda Triangle finally be solved? While retracing the route of the 5 lost Navy Avengers, we flew over the shallow waters of the Bahamas, an area thought by many to be the center of the Bermuda Triangle's potent powers. Some believe Atlantis, a prehistoric continent powered by mythical forces, is buried beneath these sands and is the cause of the triangle's strange and deadly phenomenon.
The things that link Atlantis with the Bermuda Triangle have to do with the concept that Atlantis had power systems, built pyramids all over the world, had a high technology, and that one of these power stations is actually underwater here in the Bermuda Triangle.
One of the most convincing believers in Atlantis was world-renowned clairvoyant Edgar Cayce. In the 1930s and 40s, long before the concept of the Bermuda Triangle is even born, he predicts that the first portions of Atlantis will rise again in 1968 or 69 in the waters near Bimini. Decades after Cayce's original prediction, a pilot flying in the Bahamas spots a row of unusually symmetrical rocks in the water that look surprisingly like an ancient structure. The discovery is intriguing on its own, but the location and timing is stunning. It is 1969, the very year of Cayce's prediction, and the location is Bimini.
I think the Bimini Road is evidence of Atlantis because those stones are not from the Bahamas. They've been brought here from somewhere else, and that was probably 10,000 years ago.
David Childress is an author and an expert on ancient civilizations, including Atlantis.
I believe that Bimini is one of the areas where Atlantis was located because the Bahamas themselves are a very shallow bank. Geologists say that 10,000 years ago, the time of Atlantis, ocean levels were 300 feet lower. That would make the Bahamas into a mini continent, much like Atlantis.
Locals in Bimini aren't sure if the Bimini Road is evidence of Atlantis, but they are certain that bizarre and eerie triangle phenomena occur in Bimini with frequency.
There are weird things that happen in Bimini that are unexplainable, and not just in Bimini on the island of North or South Bimini, but in the waters around Bimini. Strange occurrences happen that have no explanation for.
Just 50 miles east of Florida, Bimini is an entry point to the Bahamas for boaters, a destination for deep-sea fishing enthusiasts and divers. Krista Brown spends her days taking tourists out on the water here.
Once I was north of Bimini on a dolphin trip, and the compass just started spinning in circles. And we found the dolphins, the people got in the water, had a great interaction, a swim with them, and the dolphins started to move away. Everybody got back in the boat, started to follow the dolphins, and the compass worked exactly right. I have no idea why it happened or what, but it was about 10 minutes of just the compass was spinning. I was very freaked out.
Magnetic deviations seem to be reported more frequently here than elsewhere in the triangle. Compasses spin or are totally inaccurate. It may not be a coincidence that one of the checkpoints for Flight 19 is just north of the island at Hens and Chickens Shoals, where the crew does a bombing exercise before becoming lost. Could the phantoms of an ancient civilization, one powered by magical crystals and energy, have a hand in the triangle's mysteries?
No, I want to go back there.
I decide to travel to the Bimini Road with David Childress to investigate. We charter a dive boat to take us on this unprecedented excursion and head out to the underwater site to have a look. Explain to me, though, what Atlantis has to do with the whole phenomenon known as the Bermuda Triangle.
One of the concepts with Atlantis is that this civilization that's from over 10,000 years ago not only built roads and bridges and port cities, but they also built these giant pyramid power stations. These things, in theory, are underwater now, and they occasionally become active. When these giant Atlantean power stations become active, they create some of the Bermuda Triangle phenomenon. There's a dimensional shift. There's magnetic anomalies. your compass is going to start spinning and go crazy. Your radio suddenly won't work correctly. Even as you look out around you, the ocean and everything looks different.
15 feet below us is the famous Bimini Road, the row of rectangular large stones, and the question that's always asked, are they man-made? Could they be linked to the lost city of Atlantis? We're about to go down and find out.
All right, I'm good to go.
We're good to go?
What do you think? We'll just jump off the back and we'll be doing it?
Yeah. David and I snorkel over the stones, looking for signs the road is man-made. Geologists claim the stones are just beach rock, sand that has hardened over hundreds of years. But their placement is oddly symmetrical. While these rocks have been tested by geologists, lab results have been inconclusive. All old stones are natural, so testing their age doesn't prove anything one way or another. Only tool marks could prove that the road was assembled by man. To get a better look at the stones, David dives deeper. He believes the scientific community is hesitant to believe the truth, because doing so would turn history on its head.
If the Bimini Road were proven to be man-made, it would totally change academia's view of mankind in the past and civilization, pushing civilization back at least 10,000 years.
Modern science is still struggling to get conclusive answers about the origins of the Bimini Road. But given Edgar Casey's clairvoyant predictions, we enlist a psychic, Judy Calley, to see what she thinks about the link between Atlantis and the Bimini Road.
I can feel the energy of the city. I can feel the expansiveness of how large it is. It is huge. It's absolutely huge. I can feel the energy of the crystals.
Judy says the mythological crystals of Atlantis are actually catalysts for the unexplained disappearances in the triangle.
They are laying on their side, and the sun is activating them at certain points. And when it activates it and aligns it at a certain frequency, it opens portals. And through these portals, suddenly these people go. And they're living in another dimension. It's like a frequency away.
Locals say that 30 miles east of here is one of these portals, the one they say Flight 19 went through. They claim diving there is spooky. The water is always murky, even when it should be clear.
There are these vortex areas around the world that are portals into other dimensions, and one of those appears to be here in the Bahamas.
Did Flight 19 go through a vortex? Were they sucked into another dimension? If so, we have no hope for finding the planes. Coming up, one last chance to crack the code of the Bermuda Triangle.
Tell David that I'm not going to proceed into a thunderstorm.
But the triangle doesn't easily surrender its secrets. The conclusion, the Bermuda Triangle, startling new secrets when we come back. Whatever happened to those Avengers out over these waters 60 years ago does not happen to us. Unlike the pilots who disappeared in December 1945, 2.5 hours after takeoff, pilot Rick Siegfried sees the Florida coast coming into view. We may be close to landing, but we're no closer to answering the nagging questions of what happened in the air that night in 1945.
Fly that all at 1,000 feet and kind of put yourself in the same position that Flight 19 was an interesting experience. It was successful. You know, we made the last leg, which unfortunately they never had an opportunity to do that.
And what about the theory that Flight 19 crash-landed in Georgia's Okefenokee Swamp? After searching our target area of the swamp, the best space-age technology available could not definitively answer that question. it remains entirely possible that the fate of Flight 19 may yet be found here. But for now, the secret of its whereabouts is not one the swamp will cough up. Ultimately, violent weather forces our elite team of scientists to abandon their search for the missing mariner.
We don't know how long this cell is going to be here or whether it's going to be multiple cells coming through.
After 6 days on the water, searching 5 square miles of ocean around the last reported coordinates of the Martin Mariner, we found nothing definitive. The fate of the Mariner is now an even bigger mystery. Yet another secret the Triangle refuses to give up.
Storms will be quite strong with the potential for frequent to excessive lightning. Wind gusts to 60 miles an hour. 0.5 scale with an isolated tornado. The greatest threat appears to be...
Did we fail to find the Mariner because the Navy made a mistake when recording the coordinates? Or did we fail to find the Mariner because it was never there to be found?
Now it becomes even more of a mystery. Maybe just flew into space.
For the families of the men who disappeared on that December night 60 years ago, there will be no closure. Just renewed interest in the fate of the handsome young men who stare back at them from old photographs.
I wish you could have found something. Then, we'd have known for a fact exactly what happened and what happened to Donald. But now you tell us you found nothing in a 5-mile area, So where is it?
I just don't think that a void opened up and then swallowed them.
But what about that strange telegram the Payanessa family received weeks after the disappearance of Flight 19? What else could possibly explain the strange and interlocking web of disappearances in this part of the world?
I've heard a lot of theories, but to me it doesn't satisfy my curiosity as what has happened to all of these people and aircraft and ships.
Is it possible, as many believe, that unseen and unparalleled powers are at work here? Forces that obliterate matter or teleport man and his most sophisticated machines to other dimensions.
There's absolutely something going on in this area.
I believe this power that's in the triangle is just as evolutionary as electricity. Once we learn how to harness this energy, we'll be able to travel to different stars.
The possibilities are mind-numbing, the potential enormous. But one thing is certain. After bringing to bear the best science available at the dawn of the 21st century, the riddle of the Bermuda Triangle remains what it has always been, a mystery. And if the mystery can be solved, it will likely fall to some future generation to solve it. But for now, all we can do is look at these waters and wonder. I'm Lester Holt.